Guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and you're tapped into have y'all seen? So in this video, we're going to be discussing the three-part or three-episode series called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M's TikTok Cult. It is a new Netflix documentary that I think was released on the 29th or either the 28th, and I watched it and I want to talk about it. So let's get into it. Normally when it comes to have y'all seen, I normally do a video for each episode if it is a docu-series. If it's just a documentary, you would just get one video. This documentary, again, the title is called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M's TikTok Cult. It was a three-part or three-episode docu-series, and you're not getting three videos, you're getting one. And the reason for that is normally when I think about like, I'm going to add this documentary to the playlist or to the segment of have y'all seen, I will actually like sit down with a pen and paper and like take notes like I'm back in school, or like I'm reviewing a show. But this time I didn't do that. I wasn't really interested in this documentary. I had seen on Netflix, and I think I also saw on Twitter like a clip of like the trailer for the documentary, but I was just like, this doesn't excite me. Like this is, and normally that is like cult documentaries are my jam. Okay. I really like cult documentaries. I like fraud and scamming documentaries. Like Catch Me If You Can. Like I enjoy those types of movies as well. But like for some reason this just wasn't like pulling me in. But then the other day, I really didn't have anything going on. I was trying to find something to like background noise. And so I saw the trailer on Netflix again for the series, and I didn't move the cursor like I normally do, but it played, and then I see this, and I'll put in like a screenshot of it was Melanie Wilkins, her mom and her dad, and she's sitting in the middle, and the mom and dad are sitting on the side, and she and her parents are like begging for people to help them get in contact with Miranda or talk to her. And I was like, oh my gosh, I saw that. Like I saw that when they uploaded it. I said, is this what this is about? Because I remember that. Like, I remember seeing that video on TikTok, but I wasn't into that side of TikTok, so I really didn't pay it any attention. And then I remember a lot of people on YouTube talking about it, but I really wasn't, like, engaging with that, like, content, so I kind of paid it dust and kept it pushing. But when I saw the video in the trailer, I said, yo, is this what that's about? Because I remember people talking about 7Ms. I remember people talking about cults. And it then made me think about this one TikTok that I really enjoyed by someone who seems to still be a part of this organization. Her name on TikTok is Kendra or OK Mills or something like that. But her and her husband did this TikTok that I think got a whole bunch of views, where it was a Christmas themed TikTok, and it was like the Nutcracker. And I thought it was, I liked it. I even reposted it on my TikTok. And I was like, is she? And so then I started rabbit holing while I was watching the documentary. So then that kind of made me be like, okay, I think I want to talk about this. But like I said, normally when I do have y'all seen, you would get it'd be way more detailed, but we're not here for that because I didn't really do that. I got like real sparse notes, but I still want to talk about. Episode 1 opens up and we get introduced to the Wilkins family. We actually get introduced to 3 families and 4 of the dancers, or 4 dancers who have left the 7Ms and the Shekinah Church, and 3 families that were either a part of the Shekinah Church or who are being affected in real time by 7Ms and the Shekinah Church. So we end up meeting the Wilkins family in the open, like the first episode, where we actually see the father, Dean, and the mom, Kelly, go to the Shekinah compound, press on the intercom outside of the gate and say, hey, I want to see Miranda. The dad is like, I haven't seen my child, and like, I don't know when. I haven't been able to talk to her. We haven't hugged. I haven't seen her. I want to see my kid. And nobody responds to him. And he's like, I know y'all can hear me. Let me see my baby. but no one comes to the gate or anything like that, so they leave. We then start to get more of an history about the Wilkins family. We find out that the two daughters, which are Miranda and Melanie, seem to always want to be a part of the entertainment industry. They both seem to always wanted to be professional dancers. We see dance recitals, and we also see Miranda actually auditioning for an older season of So You Think You Can Dance. And she ends up getting past the first round of auditions. Her family is in the audience rooting and cheering her on. And things are seemingly like they're going good, but I don't think she ever made it to like the competition stage where they are dancing for an actual like audience inside of a studio and, battling it out week to week. But she doesn't make it, but she decides, you know what? I still want to chase my dreams. I still want to be a professional dancer. I'm going to stay in LA. Her family ends up going back to Michigan. The mom is really putting emphasis in this early part of this series, explaining like me and Miranda talked every day, sometimes multiple times in one day. There never was a time where we were going months and weeks without speaking to each other. We really had a good relationship before all of this 7M's film and Shekinah Church entered the chat. Okay, we were good over here. And so the mom is telling Miranda like, hey, if you want to come home, you can come home. We got your back. We got you. And she's like, no, I'm good, mom. Like, I want to come home, but I still want to chase my dreams. And I guess that inspires her older sister, Melanie, to be like, you know what, girl? I'm going out there with you too. I'm going out there with you too. So Melanie leaves Michigan and she goes to LA and they start doing auditions together. But people are telling them like, this whole sister act y'all got, you got to let it go. Y'all aren't twins, so it's not giving you the effect that y'all think is giving. And Miranda and Melanie are like, no, like we want to dance together. We want to achieve our goals together. We do not want to stop dancing with one another. I mean, that's their choice. But I get what other people are saying. Like, for some reason, it does not hit the same when you see two twins dancing versus, like, siblings of different ages. I don't know why. And maybe that's just something in people, like, in your brain. I don't know. But I got what people were saying. And then next thing you know, TikTok starts to be a big thing. So they both hop onto TikTok and they create a page called the Wilkins Sisters. And they blow up. Like, people love Miranda, people love Melanie. They love how they dance, how they look. They're starting to get brand deals. They're getting views. They're getting followers. It's up. Okay. It is up for them. And so because of how well their TikTok was going, they were able to start making like headway in the LA dancing scene. So they felt like everything was going great. While they're in the LA dancing scene, they end up meeting a guy named James Derrick, aka Bash. And now we find out that Bash and his dance partner, Concrete, aka Kevin, both performs on So You Think You Can Dance, but they actually made it to the competition stage. They actually showed a clip of Bash and Concrete dancing, and like they were in like it costumes, where I think James was in a yellow hoodie trying to portray the kid with the red balloon, and then Concrete was dressed like it, the clown. And so you got Jennifer Lopez being like, chills. And then I think, was that Neo with his bald head? I think Neo was sitting beside him with his fedora being like, and the other guy, I don't remember his name, but I know he's like a really well-known like ballroom dancer. He has a sister that dances as well, but he stood up and clapped for them as well. So people were really impressed by James and Kevin's talent. So they already kind of had a name for themselves in the LA dancing scene, but they were also trying to like prolong their careers as well as like cement their careers. So they started to hang out, especially James started to hang out with Melanie and Miranda, and people loved the content that they made together. And it was increasing. It was like a symbiotic relationship. It was increasing their visibility and their views, as well as increasing his visibility and his views. Next thing you know, girl, Seven M's pops up. So all of a sudden, all these really like big TikTok dancing accounts start to put like managed by Seven M's, or book, if you want to like book me, the name was like contact Seven M's. And everyone's like, what is Seven M's? But they felt like it was legit because these high like subscriber accounts, TikTok pages had them, and they were like, okay, they are getting the engagement, they're getting the brand deals, they're making money off of just dancing, and that's what I want to do. And it seems legit. Let me be a part. Like I said, Seven M's is popping up everywhere. And everybody seems to be like, okay, this might be my way into the entertainment industry. This might be my way of helping me manage my TikTok account and, helping me with my career. We end up meeting Kaylee and Aubrey. Aubrey ends up explaining how his TikTok account was growing very well, but he was struggling maintaining and keeping up with the brand deals that he had. So when 7M's entered into his life, he said things seemed to go smoothly because they were doing the grunt work of like sifting through his contracts and making sure that he stayed on time. Then you had Kaylee, who was like, yeah, it was hard going through these contracts, making sure that you did everything that they asked you to do in order to get paid accordingly. So 7M's was really, they was helping us, okay? They, all of them in the beginning felt like they were being helped in such a tremendous way. They expressed, they met Robert. He seemed like he was really cool. And they met Isaiah, who is Robert's son. Now, I want to read an excerpt from the People magazine article that talked about this. And I'll put the link to that in the description box below. So it says this: the CEO of 7M's Films, Robert, founded the Shekinah Church in 1994. Robert, a former doctor who grew up in Canada and graduated from the University of Toronto, expanded Shekinah Church in 2000, moving it from San Fran Springs, California to Newark, California. In addition to serving as the founder and pastor of Shekinah, Robert purchased his own TV show and called it The Millionaires Club, later retitling the show The Billionaires Club, and films like The Random Encounters and His Way More Famous Than You. However, Robert had little success in this arena. Some former members alleged in Dancing for the Devil that Robert had tried getting 7M members in the entertainment industry previously as actors and singers, but failed to break through. According to Business Insider, Robert's son Isaiah Shin ultimately made 7M a force. Isaiah began filming dancers from their social media channels and launching his own production company called High Five Films in 2018. So it seems like Isaiah was the one that was actually contacting and helping these dancers with their content. And what I will say is, it looked great. Like when you saw the videos, you knew who like these people were together. Like it was a very clean background. And the crazy thing is, it's like I guess they had like a schedule. I think that's what because I remember at one time, all of them were filming in this closet. Like it was like this huge closet, and they were all dancing in the closet, and on different accounts they were all like dancing together. Now if you go to the accounts of the people that are still a part of it, they're now all dancing at this like theater. And like they're doing it multiple times. So I guess they like rent out these places, and then they all have set times when they go and dance and all of those things. So Isaiah made 7M's a force by tapping into TikTok and the social media presence. So pretty much back to Miranda and Melanie and James. And we find out that Miranda and James are really starting to get into 7M's and the Shekinah Church. And now it seems like Miranda wants Melanie to be a part of it as well. The mom, Kelly, was like, I don't know, something over there ain't right. Because it seems like Robert had like a really invested interest in James and Miranda, where he was constantly inviting them over to his place to come hang out, eat, and, chill and stuff. And the mom was like, they want something from you. James was like, no, they're good people. They don't want anything from us. And the mom is like, no, my spidey senses is tingling. They want something from you, girl. Like danger, danger. And James was like, no, we're good. So Melanie ends up being invited to, like, I guess, Sunday dinner or whatever. It was some day where they all have dinner, where they're sitting at all the people that are a part of 7M's. They live in the same house together, pretty much. They have dinner together. It's basically like a compound, like a commune kind of thing, like a built-in community. One of the girls, I think Kaylee, was saying how like we had this wonderful house. The girls kind of had their own wing. You had your own room. Everybody could create content together. Like there were two like music studios. It was great. Basically like summer camp for them. So they invited Melanie to come to their big dinner. Melanie's asking Miranda like, so what y'all be doing in there? And Miranda is like, oh, we pray, we talk, but like we're cool, we're friends, we all just come and hang out. So Melanie goes, Robert is there, and he asks her some weird question about like, what if I told you you're like destined for hell or something, like you sinned 1,000 times? And she didn't really, like, Melanie says she really didn't know how to answer the question, but she was like, well, I don't know, but he was like, I can save you. That should have been red flag. Like that should have, anytime anyone tries to tell you they can save you, like they are your salvation, that something wrong with them. As a church kid myself, where both sides of my family like still and were very heavily in the church, like there's so many things that like I've seen growing up as a kid where it's like, that don't sound right, that don't make sense. And someone telling you that they can save you from hell, you're not God. You trying to play God with me, and I don't like it. So she kind of paused, and then everybody gets up. They put her in the middle of the room, and they all pray for her. She said they start speaking in tongues. That's red flag number 2. Because one thing for sure, both sets of my grandparents, especially my grandmothers, have said, you don't let everybody pray for you, especially when you in church, because you don't know who they praying to or why they there in church. If the spirit, or if you feel uncomfortable when they try to pray for you, you can always tell somebody, no, I don't want your prayers. And I agree. And Melanie is like, she didn't know how to feel, but she was like, maybe this is okay because I've never had this happen for me. So she ends up joining 7M's. Like I said earlier, we got introduced to Aubrey. Aubrey ends up bringing his girlfriend, Kylie. She's also a dancer, and she's at this dinner as well, and she ends up joining 7M's. So now it's like everybody's clicked up, everybody's a gang. Things seems to be going well. They're dancing, they're making content, everybody's having fun. But then things started to get weird, and Melanie started to peep the game. So they weren't allowed to just go to church. Like they had to be invited. Like you had to be invited to go to church. And I said, red flag number 3, what do you mean? What do you mean I have to be invited to come to church? Like they were not allowed to go to church. Like they had designated days where they were supposed to go to church. And I think Melanie said hers was Wednesday, and Miranda and James were always going to church on Sunday. Well, one day she was going to go take a friend to the airport, and Robert Shin's wife, Hannah Shin, calls Melanie, and she's like, you need to come to church. Like, can your friend just take a Uber to the airport? The pastor really wants you to hear this message. You need to come to church. And Melanie is like, in all my years, I've never had someone like request me to come to church. And she said she started to feel weird. That like freaked her out. And she was just like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. So she packed her bags, and she pretty much was like, I'm moving out of this house. And she ended up, I think, moving back into where they were, or getting her own place. And she said things between her and Miranda became distant because Miranda was always doing things with the church, and they also shared a car. So she was like, I rarely saw my sister. And she said, eventually I just decided to go back home. And she was like, I wanted my sister to come home with me, but like, she wouldn't. Then next thing you know, unfortunately, I think their grandmother passed away, and they wanted Miranda to come and pay her respects. Like she loved her grandmother the same way Melanie loved her grandmother, but she didn't come. She was saying that it was because of, the pandemic that she didn't feel comfortable going. And Melanie just said outright, I said, you're not going because of church. You're not going because of the church. And she said Miranda just started crying. And then that is where the title of part 1 called Die to Yourself pops in, because let me feed in the clip.
Because whenever you die to something, they'll come back to life and resurrect. When God says love one another, love your family, love etc., it doesn't mean love with the human love. It's love with God kind of love. Different kind of love. You're not Jesus' disciple until you die to your loved ones.
One of the main things we were learning is that you have to die to your family in order to save them. And by save them, I mean like them going to heaven one day, even if they don't go to church all the time. You need to die to them. That way, at least you can follow your walk with God. And if you get into heaven,
people to cut their families off. That's pretty much what it boils down to. It. You have Kevin, aka Concrete, saying how they wanted him to die to his son. And I said, what? And he said, what as well? I said that I am glad his fatherly instincts kicked in. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. He was like, he said, first of all, how do you do that? And when I asked people, they didn't know how to do it. So no, I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, you did that right. Okay. And because I'm like, cutting off a child is worse than cutting off an adult, because at least when an adult doesn't understand, that's one thing. But when a baby doesn't get it, like a kid, that's a whole other can of worms that ain't right. So pretty much the family is getting worried about Miranda. She's not communicating with them like she normally does. They're like sending her text messages. They're like, hey, Miranda, just like this so I know you're okay. She's not responding to them. She didn't go to the funeral. They're just stressed out and they're scared that something bad has happened to Miranda. So they decide to call the police in the area to do a wellness check on her. They record it. We actually hear it on the episode where Miranda is like, oh, I'm fine. I just didn't want to, I wanted to grieve alone. I didn't want to go grieve with my family. And the parents are like, don't leave her there. Like, there's definitely something going on. And the police pretty much told them, we really can't do anything. We can't do anything because she's an adult. So they're freaking out. So they decide to go to LA themselves to speak to her. We have this, when the dad recounts his interaction when this happened, I felt so bad for him. I wanted someone to give him a hug or just pat, rub his back. Even the mom, all of them, I just wanted somebody to hug them and tell them it's gonna be all right. Because the dad talks about how Miranda was sitting in the car, Kylie was sitting in the car. That's Aubrey's girlfriend. Now Kylie and Miranda seem to be really close. And Miranda's sobbing in the car. The dad's holding on to the door frame, being like, tell me what's wrong, Miranda. Did we do something wrong? Did we hurt you? Let me, just come back with us. We'll figure it out together. And she's crying, not really saying anything. And he's just the dad was like, I know once I shut that door and I let it go, the relationship is over. What we had is done. And that's pretty much what happened. He shut that door and it was over. And their relationship pretty much changed at that point. You have Melanie trying to still, promote and do dances and everything on the Wilkins sister TikTok. But unfortunately, it was the two of y'all and people are getting suspicious. People are like, okay, girl, where your sister at? And she's telling them oh, we're just taking time apart from each other. And people are like, that don't make sense. Something about that ain't right. And Melanie feels bad because she's like, I'm not a liar. I don't want to lie to these people, but I don't know what to say. So then out of the blue, they end up finding out that Miranda and James get engaged. She done cut her hair. She done bleached it blonde and they're getting engaged. And the family is upset. They're pissed because they're like, you're not talking to us. You're getting engaged. Now you're getting married. What is going on? So Melanie decides to get in the comments with a passive aggressive, congratulations. And she gets blocked. Miranda blocks her. James blocks her. They block the whole entire family. And that prompted Melanie and her parents to make that viral video where they're pleading and explaining to the public what's going on, what Shekinah Church is, what is 7Ms. And I think it did. The video, when it came out, I will say it wasn't well received. I remember a lot of people feeling like they were lying. And I think it was because something about Melanie and Miranda's content, for me, lacked like care, like it lacked soul. Okay. It felt cringy, like they were putting on this like we're the best of friends kind of sisters act, and it just didn't flow for me. Like when you watch the documentary and they show that one clip of Miranda reading off this letter that she wrote to her sister when they were younger, and the way they both were reacting to it was cringy. And when you look at that viral clip of where Melanie and her family are pleading to the public, trying to explain to them what's going on with Miranda, it just didn't feel genuine. And it sucks that like people didn't believe them because their feelings were genuine, but it was too perfectly like curated. And when Miranda came out with her videos was more well received because she wasn't all dolled up. She just had on like a purple t-shirt and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was just talking. And she pretty much accused her family of being prejudiced and harboring some ill feelings towards James, and that's why she distanced herself from them. And looking back, I kind of believed it, but now watching the documentary, I'm like, no, because they pretty much welcomed him with open arms in the beginning. So girl, I feel like you lying. But people received that more they were able to receive what Miranda was saying. But then things changed because with that video, everything started to change. Like other parents and other family members and friends who were cut off from their family because of 7M's and the Shekinah Church started to make Reddit posts, started to reach out to Melanie and her family. And that is when we meet the Rainio family. The Rainios, the dad's name I think is Levi. And then the mom's name is Magdalia. They have a son named Nick Rainio, and he, I think, is still a part of 7M's, and he cut them off pretty much. And they were like shocked that other people were experiencing the same thing that was happening to them. So then all of a sudden, all these people who were a part of the Shekinah Church started to come out, especially when they started to mention Robert Shin's name a lot more, where people were like, oh my gosh, he's still like doing this to people. He's still harming people. And this started to put like doubt in a lot of the TikTok dancers who were a part of the church. They were like, okay, how are we like this small 7M's right here? We're just this small group, but we're attached to the Shekinah Church. Like all of this bad stuff is happening. How do we not know this? Like he did a good job. Him and his son did a good job like separating the two, because a lot of the dancers were like, all of this was happening. Like they started to have doubt, and they started to like go back to the weird encounters that they had with Robert or with people who are associated with the church, and they started to compare notes with one another. We end up finding out that they all had like mentors who they had to ask to like buy things from. Like if they needed shoes or clothes, they had to contact the mentor, and the mentor had to tell them if it was okay. I said that should have been red flag number 35 for y'all, because what do you mean I can't spend my own money? And they were like, they always had to check in, and it came a sense of like they were always being surveillanced. So they were like, okay, that's not right. Now people are coming out. And then they had them signing NDAs in church. Because of that video that Melanie and her family did, Robert did a 4-hour sermon about how he's not afraid of these liars and these people coming out against them. And then all of a sudden, I think Aubrey and Kevin were like, they just started passing down NDAs. Kevin said, I didn't sign it because who's signing NDAs at church, and why do I need to sign an NDA? What you trying to hide, sir? And then Aubrey said, I'm ashamed, but I did sign it because I didn't think anything of it really. But then things just really started to change because of that video. So it's crazy how in the beginning, when that video of Melanie and her parents came out, it wasn't well received, but then in the long run, it started to open the eyes of a lot of people and give validation to a lot of people who started to like feel like they were like being gaslit or going crazy, that their loved ones were trapped in a cult or a high control group and they needed help out. Like the skepticism and people's doubts in 7M's and in the Shekinah Church and in Robert started to grow, especially after Melanie and her family posted that video. And then you have all these people who are like ex-parishioners of the Shekinah Church coming out and like giving their stories about the abuse and the mistreatment that they faced being a part of that church. So all of the dancers, because the dancers was like, they were a part of the Shekinah church, but they weren't a part of the Shekinah church. Like I said, you could only come to church when you were invited. So like if you weren't going to church and meeting these people every day and you were only coming when you were asked to, I don't think people would start to like look around and really like vet what's happening or really analyze the situation. But all of a sudden, all of them were like, all of this bad stuff is happening at this church. Like, I didn't see like how is this happening? And like I said, they start trading back stories where they were like, oh, that was weird. No, this happened. That was weird. Especially when they got to the SA claims and allegations. Like everyone's just like, oh my God, like, whoa, like what is going on here? And Robert is denying it. He's saying, they coming up against a man of God, because is what he went by. He was like, I'm the man of God, or like, he was just like, they just coming up against a man, coming up against the man of God. I don't care. They went against Jesus and all of that stuff. And for some people, he was winning them back. For other people's, they were like, something is really not right, especially when it came to that NDA. But what really, I think what really changed things is when people started to analyze the way he was like praising people. They were all saying that like a lot of people wanted to get Robert's praise. He's the man of God. He's going to give you blessings. Like, if he's happy, you get blessings and all of that stuff. And they used an example like whenever you did good or you got a brand deal, he would usher you up on the pulpit and everyone would congratulate you and like big you up. Like I think the example they use is like Aubrey got some deal where he was making the deal was like $37,000 and they were like, yay, Aubrey, like really championing him. And a lot of people were like, they wanted that praise, they wanted that admiration. And then if you did bad, he would bring you up on the stage and chastise you and make you feel bad. But a lot of people were like, they were working hard to get that praise because they didn't want to be chastised. And some people started to call that into question as well. But what really put like the nail in the coffin for a lot of people where they were like, yeah, this is a cult. I like this, something isn't right, is when his daughter name is Chloe, and she had a husband. I think his name, let me look at my notes. I think his name was Daniel. Yes. So Daniel and Chloe, they ended up leaving Shekinah Church and 7M's. And in the documentary, they actually show them like doing entertainment jobs. So like when I read that excerpt from People magazine where they were like, Robert was desperately trying to get into the entertainment industry and they were trying to make movies, they were trying to break into singing, but the son Isaiah ended up being like, oh, let's film these dancers. And he really did well on the marketing. That was their way into the entertainment industry. Well, they were really trying to push Chloe and Daniel to the front. Daniel was acting, Chloe was singing, but then they ended up leaving the church. They ended up leaving 7M's. They ended up finding out that like Daniel had stopped speaking to his family after he married Chloe. And the crazy thing about it was Daniel had been a part of the church since 2000. So it's like he was here when the church was like in its stages, like its early stages of like, rising to what it is today. So when somebody who was an OG leaves, everyone was like, oh, something's wrong. And that really prompted a lot of the dancers that were featured in this documentary to be like, yeah, we got to leave. And so all of them, they left. They left embarrassed. They left sad. They left broken. It was sad. Like when they were all saying how like being a part of this like took something from me. Like some of them were like, I'm ashamed to admit that like I was in a cult. Like I don't even want to dance anymore. And dancing used to be like in a part of every aspect of my life. And it's just kind of like, wow. Like they were all like really embarrassed. And I was hoping by the end when we got to episode 3, they were all like, it'd be different. Like, maybe they had gone to therapy, but in episode 2, it was really all these people feeling like ashamed of themselves and brokenhearted by like the church and by this management company that really took advantage of them. The episode starts to dive deeper into the Shekinah Church. They actually talk about when it was founded in 1994 by Robert Shin. They also explain how he transitioned, like once they moved to a different part of the California, he started to change the way the church was ran, and they started to get a lot of parishioners. We then get introduced to the Lee family, or the Lee sisters, and we meet Priscilla, who's the oldest, and Melanie, who's the youngest. At first, we meet them while they're in Korea, and we find out that they are Korean immigrants and that they did not have the best go, like they did not have the best start. The mom was an alcoholic. She would leave the oldest to take care of the youngest for months at a time. And then the dad pretty much was nowhere to be found. And so eventually, I guess Priscilla saved up enough money to get her and her sister Melanie over to America. And that is how they found their way to the Shekinah Church. Melanie explains how the Shekinah like church for immigrants, especially Korean immigrants, is important because it's a community. And so they really were going there for the community, but then they started to appreciate, I guess, the message that was being told to them, and they wanted to stay. So it's interesting how what was happening in 7M's was also happening, like, the Shekinah Church was like the blueprint for 7M's, because how they had all the dancers move into one place together. They had all the congregation do basically the same thing. Like Melanie was talking about how they were living in this one apartment complex together. Then they end up convincing everyone to move to this one house together. They weren't allowed to pick who they wanted to room with. So Melanie wasn't rooming with Priscilla, which she thought was weird. And so did Priscilla. Then the church started to like employ the parishioners. Like I think they said the Shins had like a $2 million home that while everybody else was living in a house together. They also were like, they opened up like 2 flower shops, I think a cleaners and something else, and like a coffee shop, and everybody, all the people in church were working there. And I think Melanie ends up saying that she worked from 7 a.m. as a teenager, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and was only getting $100 at the end of the week. I said that's sharecropping. That's slavery right there, because it's just a cycle. Like they go to church, they are tithing and offering. You're using their money to make your own businesses, and then you have them working there, living and probably paying you rent at that house, and it just keeps going around and around and around and around. But they weren't really like, I guess they thought nothing of it. Because Priscilla was so strict as a parent, Melanie wasn't allowed to have a lot of friends because her sister was worried that she would become an alcoholic or a drug addict like their mom. So she only allowed her to have one friend, and that friend was Marky. Marky was a black guy, and she brung him to church. And Marky was like, as a black man, it felt like they were playing, like they were cosplaying a black church. But he was like, you know what? That's what y'all do. That's what y'all do. I'm good, but thank you for inviting me. But they continue to stay friends. He also understood that, like, although Priscilla was strict, he understood that she was a kid raising a kid, and he couldn't really fault her for the way she wanted to raise her sister at that point. But they still stayed friends. So things seem to be going, like, I guess, okay for them. But then that's when things got weird. So they called Robert Shin, the man of God. And then he also, like, his wife at the time was called the wife of God. He also had other family members, like his sisters, and like his sister that was a part of it as well. Well, one day they were sitting in church, and Melanie says, and she's recounting this story where she said a bunch of women busted into the church screaming and wailing about how Robert Shin essayed them, saying that, like, he pretty much like promised them that they would be the woman of God as long as he could do whatever. And some of them didn't want to do it. Some of them, I guess, did, but they felt like, played once they realized he was just doing what he wanted to them. And so they were freaking out. His sister ended up being like their representative and like condemning him while in church. And some people stayed in church when the situation happened. Some people left. He went on this speech about how he's human and he makes mistakes, but he was holding himself like he was a god. So I'm like, so some people were like, how can you be like this God figure or this man of God, but you're doing this to these women? And they left. But others actually accepted his, like, I guess his fake humility and was like, okay, bet. We'll stay in the church. And then that's where like things started to get like weird for Melanie, where she kind of started to feel weird. So then she was asked to have a private meeting with Robert, and he basically said, David was able to have a mistress. And I was like, I don't think David was able to have a mistress. That's not what that chapter about David was about, sir, or Daniel. There is nothing in the Bible where God says you can have a mistress. But he basically tells Melanie he can have a mistress and that he wants Melanie to be his mistress. Melanie tells Marky, and he's like, you need to get out of there. You need to get out of there. Because while she was in that private meeting, he was trying to get her to like massage him. And I guess that's how everything always started with this situation, where he would convince you to massage him and how that's okay and that it's just the human body. And then he would try to get the woman to take off her clothes or to get more like comfortable, and then things would happen. But then they weren't allowed to speak about what happened or what they saw. So there was an added shame to it as well. So like she was just like, no. So Melanie tells Marky, and Marky's like, girl, we leaving. You pack up some things and leave. And so while she's staying on the compound or living in the house that they have everyone in, she's supposed to be moving to a different house. And so she's pretending like, okay, she's packing up to move. They're telling her you're going to move on Thursday. Melanie gets a phone call, and Robert Shin basically tells her, well, girl, you don't have to sleep with me, but there's another person I want you to sleep with. And she was like, Melanie's like, give me 10 days, so I can become comfortable with this. And he's like, no, you have 3. So then she calls Marky back and was like, oh, I got to leave ASAP. I got to leave ASA mother effing P. So they pack up this stuff. Marky, being a real friend, pulls up with a bat in his car open, tells her to put everything in the car. And like Melanie is like, okay, we're going to leave. I'm going to pick up my sister, and then we're leaving. We're out of here. We are out of here. When they're packing up, one of the cars of one of the staff at the church pulls up, and they block them in. And Marky is basically like, move it or I'm ramming through it. I said, do what you got to do, Marky. So they're like, Marky got his bat, and he's like, let's go. Like what we doing? What we do? He got the bat in hand. He like, if I got to, I'll swing it. And so Melanie's freaking out, but she's like, I have to leave because I'm not sleeping with that person. I'm not sleeping with him. I'm not sleeping with anybody. I have to leave. So she's in the car. They're on the phone, and then they end up leaving. Like the people end up backing out the driveway from blocking them in, and Marky and Melanie leave. Melanie gets on the phone. She calls her sister, and she's like, I'm coming to get you. We're leaving. And Priscilla's like, no. And she's like, girl, do you know what they trying to do? And Priscilla's like, I can't leave. And mind you, by this time, Priscilla, to me, I guess, was like, she was in too deep. Like, she was already working at one of their one of the church's businesses, where like she was making a lot of money, but they were taking her money. They would call and tell her like, the man of God needs this, or Shekinah needs this. And they were telling her to give them her routing number. She was in too deep. And she also felt like, because of all the bad things that happened to her as a child by way of like a neglectful parents and being young and raising a child, she thought what she was doing was correct, that like she was going to save her family from damnation. So she was like, girl, no. And then she started to see her family, like her sister, as cursed. So she didn't go with her. But Melanie said, Melanie was like, well, I got to go then. So she left. So then, unfortunately, Robert used this moment of like a traumatic and like very vulnerable experience, because she just lost her sister to basically swoop in and start abusing, SAing her, where he's basically saying like, you have to give me something because she hurt the man of God. And so unfortunately, Priscilla, believing that her family is cursed and that doing this will save her family from damnation, she gives in, and she does this for like 10 years. Like, she had her own room, but she was so like grossed out and like she just didn't feel good doing what she was doing, that she would like print out huge Bible scriptures and like plaster them all over her wall and like try to like soothe herself from such a horrible experience. And he would come in and do whatever. I know for a fact, because I believe in God, okay, and I believe in hell. He going to the 9th level of hell. Cause you don't play with God. You don't play with God's people like that. Even though I believe everybody is God's people, but I'm just doing that to somebody. That is so horrible. And that is horrible that lady experienced that for 10 years, because in her mind, she thought she was helping her family. Like, horrible. But what actually made Priscilla leave was the new woman of God. So the old wife was no longer there, and the new wife, who's still currently his wife, Hannah, becomes his wife, and now she's the woman of God. I guess Hannah didn't like the fact that like Robert was going was still messing around or was messing with Priscilla and doing what he was doing to Priscilla, and she felt some type of way. She barges into Priscilla's room, rips everything off trashes this lady's room and begins to like beat up on her. And Priscilla can't really like fight back. She doesn't know what's happening. She's also very sick as well. And he keeps telling her like, it's the demons coming out of your body. Honestly, it was her body rejecting him. And he was telling her like, you have so many demons, and I'm the man of God and I'm cleansing you. Horrible man. Horrible person, by the way. And so Hannah comes in there, wrecks the whole entire room, beating up on Priscilla. And Robert comes in and tells Priscilla, this is all your fault. And I guess that was like her light bulb moment to realize this isn't right. So she left. She packed up all her stuff and she left. And her and her sister are now trying to like build a relationship. And when I tell you, one of the rawest scenes I have ever seen was in episode 3, where they have a conversation where I legit sat there and I cried, because I felt the pain of both of them. And I was just like, my God. Part 3 is where I liked part 3. It was the rawest episode, but also it was everybody gaining their power back and and regrouping and creating new lives for themselves. And I just thought that was like wonderful to see. It was the rawest episode for me. But since we were talking about the lead sister, I'll continue. So after Priscilla leaves the compound, after experienced such horrible treatment, she's like trying to reclaim her life. She ends up meeting up with her sister. Things don't go the way Melanie thought they would go. Like, she's kind of at first she's scared because she's like, who is this person? And is she going to go back to this situation? And Priscilla's like, no, I'm not going back. But it's very awkward between them because they have to build a new relationship. Like, the past is the past, and now they have to start anew. And we actually see them in Korea, where Priscilla is pretty much like, I want to take back my life, and maybe talking to my past will help me take back my life. So we actually see her meet up with her father. He's very old. And when I tell you she read her daddy his rights, she basically said, me and your other daughter would not have been in this situation had you been around. And I can't put all the blame on mom. You own that too. Because, I thought I was a smart person. I feel like I'm a smart person, but I was in a cult for 23 years. He said, oh, I thought it was 5. She was like, no, 23 years I was in a cult, sir. 23 years. Like, And had you been in my life, this probably wouldn't happen. And then he tries to touch her, and she's like, "Don't touch me." And he did it again. She read that, and I was happy she had that moment to say what she needed to say, because yeah, your job was to protect your daughters. Your job was to guide them and make sure that they were okay. And just because the mom was messed up, you were supposed to step in even more to make sure that your kids were okay. So when Priscilla gets back from Korea, she like, you know what? I want vengeance. I want justice. So she tells Melanie, I want to sue him. And Melanie's like, hold up. Who we suing? And she's like, Robert Shin. And Melanie's like, do you know how much money that costs? Priscilla said, I don't care. I want to do it. And he gonna fear me the way I feared him, because he sees me as some weak, feeble girl. Not no more. He gonna know my wrath. I said, let him know, Priscilla. Let him know. So they start to talk to everybody in the documentary. We see them meet up with Kylie, Kaylee, and Aubrey and Kevin. We also see them meet up with the Wilkins family, and I think they met up with the Rainio family. And once all of this starts to gain traction, we actually see Robert starts to change his tune about the whole die to yourself, and starts to encourage the people to start reaching out to the families that they cut off. Sorry, y'all. That they cut off. So pretty much we end up seeing the Rainio family meet up with Nick, but they can't speak about 7Ms. And we actually see Miranda do the same thing with her family, and they can't meet up with 7Ms. It's like such an awkward interaction. Even though we didn't see it on the documentary, they showed pictures, and it felt fake. Like you could tell like the parents were like clinging on to like their kids, and the kids were like kind of giving like a photo op, because Miranda was always constantly taking videos of her hanging out with her family just to post online so she could act like everything was okay. But you got Melanie, the sister, being like, this is stupid. This is stupid, and this makes no sense. And I said, girl, I'm with you too, Melanie. Because the other Melanie said the same thing, because we actually see them sit down with what's it called? We actually see them sit down. We actually see her sit down with the Wilkins and basically tell them like, you need to be direct with her. But Kelly is scared, because Kelly reached out to Miranda a while ago, where like someone who coached her, who has interactions with high intensity like cults and groups, said like sometimes you can tell them like, hey, I have some really important big news to tell you, and they will come and meet with you, and you can talk to them then. And she did that with Miranda, and it kind of pissed her off, and Miranda was just kind of like, that's why you called me out here, and she just left, and the communication kind of went dead silent. So Kelly's just like basking in this little bit of interaction she has with her kid, and everyone's kind of like, girl, that's not enough, and it shouldn't be enough to you. So like I said, they ready to sue. We actually see Melanie and Aubrey sit down, and she's trying to get the help like build a case, where pretty much Melanie is like, if we can get them on like the legal part, like of the money part, we might be okay. Because that's honestly how a lot of people like cult members go to jail. They don't actually go to jail because, well, at least, one of them did. But most of them really go to jail because of like either like money laundering or like fraud. Like the government finds some way where they messing with money, but it's never really about like who, like the people they hurt, unless the people actually come out and say like, hey, this person did this to me. Hey, this person did that to me. Like you have to, like the actual survivor of the abuse has to be the one to say something and help. Like that's how they help build a case. And we see that's what they're doing throughout this part 3, is trying to build a case against Robert. Now, at the end of the episode, they said that the trial against him is supposed to start in 2025. Hopefully it's successful on their ends, but we see like Priscilla is very adamant about like, doing this. Again, we see Melanie with Aubrey, and pretty much she is trying to like show how they move money around the church. And so they show this pie chart where Aubrey basically said you had to pay for housing, you had to pay for management, you had to pay for them to film and help edit your videos. Then you had to give like 30% of your check to tithes and offering. And all of that had to be done before taxes, before you get the rest of your check. And he was like, and then you think about it, when they referenced him earlier in the episodes, he got a $37,000 brand deal. And I bet you he only got maybe like a crumb of that money after paying everybody else, because they then even talked about how they had to like contact other people to even move outside of the country or go anywhere. So it was just a lot that they were going through, but all of them were like, you know what, we want our lives back. So we actually see the dancers reclaiming their lives, and I loved it. I love seeing Priscilla and her sister have such a raw conversation where you see Priscilla is still like, it was such a raw, when I tell you it was such a raw conversation that they had. I think at that time they were in Korea together, and you see them at like, I guess like a tea shop or somewhere. And Melanie is upset and frustrated with Priscilla because she was late coming to her daughter's birthday. And Priscilla was like, girl, I was late. But Melanie's like, you shouldn't be late. Like, this is your niece's birthday, like you're her aunt, and like it's common sense. Like, and Melanie's whole thing is like, I thought she would want more with me. Like, I thought she would want to build a better, like be closer to me. She was like, she's been gone for 7 years. And Melanie even tells Priscilla, girl, every time me and my husband left or like moved somewhere, there was always a guest bedroom, and that bedroom was always for you. It was always for you. So Melanie is like, girl, I've always been thinking about the days that you come out. And Priscilla is sitting on the other side of the table being like, girl, I fight every day not to take myself off this earth. Like, be glad I showed up to the party. And it's just like, I felt so bad for both of them, because it was clear as day. You got Melanie, the younger sister, crying out, wanting this relationship with her sister. And you got Priscilla, somebody who is at that time was ashamed, was feeling broken and beaten down, that was probably thinking that distancing herself from her sister and her niece was the right thing to do, not to hurt them. And it's just like, oh, I wanted them to hug so bad, because when she said, Melanie, look at me, I said, oh, Melanie, I was like, oh, it hurt my heart. Like, I really was like, but at the end of the episode, we actually see them serve. They didn't do it, but they had a group of people serve Robert Shin at like some Chinese restaurant, and everybody else around him. And he looked shocked. He was like, oh. And they was like, it's happening, sir. It's happening. And we see Melanie and Priscilla in Korea really like expressing how, like, you know, they're starting anew. Like, they can't go back, but they're starting a new relationship. And I really do hope that they have created a new relationship for themselves, that they are actually like close in a way that they want to be, where it's like they're both on the same page. We end up seeing that Aubrey started dancing again, that I think he also is like, he hosts dance classes or has like a dance crew. We saw him dancing on a stage. We see that unfortunately Aubrey and Kylie broke up, and they really loved each other, but because of what they experienced in the Shekinah church and in 7M's, they realized that they don't really know each other or know themselves, that like they needed time apart. But she is now like a dance teacher. We saw her teaching like she has a little dance crew. They go to competitions. And then Kevin and Kylie, or like Kaylee are like in a couple, and he's starting to dance again. Girl, he was on Renaissance, and I feel like I saw him at the concert, and I was so excited to see him. I said, not you dancing with Beyonce? Okay. And then I think Kaylee, my bad. Kaylee is also working with him as well, but it was just nice to see all of them like, that this didn't like, I know it probably tainted the way they view like religion and spirituality, and they spoke about that and how it took a piece of them, but it was just nice to see everyone kind of like trying to find their place, trying to get back to what they love. And even with the we didn't get like an ending story for the Rainio family other than them saying like they're going to continue to fight for their son. But we see with the Wilkins family that Melanie is getting married. Like, she's battling back and forth on whether or not she should allow her sister in her wedding. And I said, girl, don't do it, because I wouldn't do it. We not cool like that. We not cool like that. And actually, she did get married. She married, I think, like an NFL player, like from the Detroit Lions. I think that's what that's called. I'm not very versed on a lot of football teams, but she gets married. They posted the wedding photos on Instagram. They got married, like, I think on the 25th, and Miranda and James were nowhere to be found. But I was happy for Melanie, because it seems like she was being totally consumed by this. And I was glad that her husband was like, this is our day. This is your day. It don't need to be about your sister. And I said, yeah, because she made her choice. Documentary. I thought it was a pretty good 3-part series or 3-part episodes. It is interesting that like this documentary came out and you can clearly tell that Miranda, James, and possibly Nick, because I couldn't find his TikTok or his Instagram, are still a part of 7M's and the Shekinah Church. And so that they're all still a part of the church. They just don't have it in their bio anymore. They don't have 7M's in their bio anymore. They have other media and like contact information, because right now, like I said earlier in the video, if I did say it, sometimes I be forgetting what I say when I do these videos, but they're all posting videos of themselves dancing in this theater. Like Miranda's doing like some like Eliza Minnelli dance in this one theater, in the same theater. Then you have KO or Kendra and Miranda and Kendra's husband dancing to Got Me a Cadillac by the Dreamgirls by Eddie Murphy. And then there's another dance that Kendra and I think her husband James did at the same theater. So it's like they have the same concept where when they were doing it, they would all film in the same location, just do different videos. So it's like, we know you still with that church. But I wonder, with this documentary coming out, is this going to prompt other people to leave? Especially with these really heavy accusations about what happened to like Priscilla, what happened to Kylie, what happened to other women who were speaking out about what Robert Shin did to them. So it's just kind of like, I wonder if this is going to really change anything. It might not, but it might also save somebody from getting caught up with them. And maybe that's the best thing that they can hope for this type of outcome. But yeah, y'all, that is it. That is all. Remember to be bravely authentic, and definitely hop down in them comments below and share your thoughts. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.